In the heart of the Milky Way galaxy, hundreds of advanced civilizations lived under one powerful body, the Galactic Council. This council controlled trade, laws, and even wars across thousands of planets. It believed in order, but more often, it used fear to keep control. To the Council, Earth was nothing special, just another small, late-blooming planet filled with emotional and chaotic humans. The Council allowed Earth to join its alliance only to take its resources and use its people as cheap labor. Earth had no real say in decisions, and its leaders were often ignored or laughed at in council meetings. But the Council made a mistake. It thought humans were weak. It thought Earth had no bite. It never saw what was coming. For years, Earth kept quiet. While its leaders smiled in front of the Council behind closed doors, they were planning. They watched how the Council treated weaker planets. They saw how entire species were wiped out for disobedience. They knew their turn would come sooner or later. So, Earth prepared. In secret labs deep underground and in hidden space stations orbiting far-off moons, humans began building a weapon. Not just any weapon. A superweapon powered by the energy of a dying star. They called it Project Solace. It was designed to destroy entire fleets from light years away with pinpoint accuracy. Only a few top scientists and world leaders knew about it. It took decades, billions of credits, countless hours. But finally, it was ready. Silent, invisible, deadly. Still, Earth did not attack. They waited. That moment came on a cold morning over New Geneva, Earth's global capital. A massive council ship, gold-plated and lined with banners, landed in Earth's main square. The council had arrived in person. That was rare. When the Earth president met them, the look on the alien leader's face made it clear. This was not a friendly visit. High Counselor Varek, a tall reptilian being with glowing red eyes, stepped forward. His voice was sharp and cold. "Have updated the resource agreement," he said. "Earth will now provide triple its energy and mineral output. Resistance is not advised." The Earth leaders were silent. Varek continued. "Failure to comply will result in orbital cleansing. You have 7 days." It wasn't a threat, it was a warning. The Council had done this before, to planets that were now nothing but ash. But this time, they had picked the wrong planet. Later that day, Earth's top leaders met in the underground command center beneath the Arctic ice. The president looked tired, but her voice was firm. "They think we are scared. They believe we are alone. They think we will kneel." The military commander, General Roth, stepped forward. "Shall I activate Solace?" There was a pause. Then, a nod. "Let the Council see our true face." The next morning, a small Earth shuttle approached the orbiting Council flagship. On board were diplomats, carrying a response. Counselor Varek sat on his throne aboard the command deck, amused. Humans still wanted to talk? Pathetic, he thought. But then, the human ambassador placed a small device on the table. It showed a live feed from deep space, an asteroid field on the edge of Earth's system. A massive Council fleet had been parked there for weeks waiting for orders to attack Earth if needed. Suddenly, the feed zoomed in. A small, dark shape floated toward the fleet, a satellite. The screen blinked. Then, light. Blinding. White-hot light. The entire Council fleet vanished in a flash. Silence filled the room. "This is only a demonstration," the human ambassador said calmly. "The weapon is ready to fire again. Earth will no longer bow." The ambassador stood up. "We wish for peace," he added. "But we are ready for war." Then he left. Counselor Varek sat frozen, claws digging into the armrests. For the first time in decades, the Galactic Council was afraid. Back on Earth, news of the secret weapon spread like wildfire. People cheered in the streets. For the first time, they felt strong. Not just survivors in the galaxy, but a power in their own right. But Earth's leaders knew this was just the beginning. The Council would not back down easily. Pride ran deep in the galaxy's rulers. Earth had delivered a message. Now they would have to prepare for the storm, and in the distance, across the stars, angry fleets were already on the move. The shockwaves from Earth's unexpected strike rippled through the galaxy. The Galactic Council had always prided itself on being untouchable. They were the masters, the rulers of thousands of planets, and humanity was nothing more than an insignificant speck. Until now. The destruction of an entire fleet in an instant sent fear coursing through the leaders of the Galactic Council. No one had ever dared to challenge their authority in such a way. And now the galaxy was watching. The Earth was no longer the weak, helpless planet they had once believed it to be. They had become a threat. On the High Council platform, the leaders of the Council gathered, each face a mask of rage and disbelief. Councillor Varric, the reptilian leader, was seething. He had led the delegation to Earth, and now his fleet was gone, wiped out by a single unknown weapon. His eyes glowed red as he stood before the gathered members. This is unacceptable, Varric snarled. A tiny, insignificant planet has dared to strike at the heart of the Council. We will not allow this to go unpunished. They must learn their place. Councillor Litha, a graceful being with shimmering silver skin, stood beside him, her expression unreadable. We cannot let this go. We must show the galaxy that the Council's power cannot be challenged. Earth must be made an example. We can't afford to underestimate them, Varric hissed. We need to act swiftly but carefully. If Earth has this kind of power, we cannot simply launch another attack. We need to bring them to the negotiating table. Let us try diplomacy once more. Lith's eyes narrowed. Diplomacy? With humans? Varric paused, realizing the truth. Diplomacy with humans had never been their strong suit. Earth's leaders had always been treated with disrespect, their requests ignored or overruled. Now that they had the power to strike back, the Council's approach had to change. But deep down, Varric knew that the Council had underestimated them for far too long. Back on Earth, President Clara Bennett sat in her office, staring at the message the Galactic Council had sent. It was a formal request for a diplomatic meeting. The message was curt, demanding that Earth's leaders meet with the Council to discuss the future of the planet. Beneath the cold words, Clara could sense the tension and fear. The Council was scared, but they would never admit it. The question was, what would Earth do next? As Clara sat in silence, General Roth entered the room, his uniform pressed and his face serious. Ma'am, they've reached out, they want to talk. Clara didn't respond immediately. She knew what this meeting could mean. The Council had never been kind, never given Earth the respect it deserved. And now they were asking for a diplomatic meeting because they feared what Earth could do with its new weapon. Do we trust them? Clara asked, her voice low but determined. I don't trust them, Roth replied, shaking his head. They've always been ruthless. They'll try to manipulate us into giving up our weapon. If we meet with them, it's a trap. Then why go at all? Clara asked, looking up at him. We need to show the galaxy we're willing to stand up for ourselves, Roth said. We need to prove we're not just going to be bullied into submission. Clara nodded. Set up the meeting, but make sure they know one thing. Earth is not going back to the way it was. A few days later, the meeting was set. The Galactic Council's fleet arrived in Earth's orbit once again, this time much larger and far more intimidating. The massive ships filled the sky, blocking out the stars, casting a shadow over the planet below. The Council was taking no chances. They had come prepared for whatever Earth might throw at them, and they weren't going to be caught off guard again. The meeting chamber in Earth's capital, President Clara Bennett stood with her team of diplomats. Across from them sat the Council's representatives, led by Councillor Varric, the same reptilian leader who had come before. For a moment, neither side spoke. Varric's cold eyes glared at Clara. You have made a grave mistake, President Bennett. Earth's actions have forced us to reconsider the future of your planet. The time for games is over. You will submit to the Council's terms. You will give us your resources, your technology, and your compliance. Failure to comply will result in total destruction. Clara kept her expression neutral, but inside her heart raced. She had expected threats, but to hear them spoken aloud so plainly made her stomach turn. The council truly believed that their power was absolute. But Clara was no longer the fearful leader she had once been. Earth had power now, and she wasn't going to back down. "Your terms are unacceptable," Clara replied, her voice calm but firm. "You think you can scare us into submission, but you're wrong. Earth will not bow to you. We will not be your slaves." Varek's eyes narrowed. "You will regret these words, President. You have no idea what you're dealing with." "I know exactly what I'm dealing with," Clara said, her voice growing stronger. "You think you can crush us, but you haven't seen what Earth is capable of. We will defend ourselves, and we will not be cowed." The tension in the room was thick. The council's representatives shifted uneasily in their seats. They had expected Earth to be broken, to surrender quickly. But Clara's words had shaken them. For the first time, they realized they might not have the upper hand anymore. Varek leaned forward, his voice dangerously low. "This foolishness ends here. If you do not comply, we will launch our full forces. Earth will burn." Clara stood tall, unwavering. "Then we will fight. And if we fall, we will go down fighting, not as cowards, but as people who stood up for their freedom." There was a long silence as the two sides stared at each other, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. The diplomatic meeting had failed, and war was now inevitable. The Galactic Council's representatives left the room, their threats still echoing in the air. Earth's leaders knew that the Council would return with everything they had, and this time they would be prepared. As the meeting ended and the diplomats departed, Clara looked out over the city, the weight of the future heavy on her shoulders. She knew that this was only the beginning. The Galactic Council had underestimated Earth before, but now they had no choice but to face the consequences of their actions. Earth had fought back, and it was just getting started. The tension in the galaxy was thick. After the diplomatic meeting failed, the Galactic Council was determined to crush Earth's resistance. The leaders of Earth, however, had no intention of giving up. They knew that the time to act was now. The Council had underestimated them once, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. President Clara Bennett stood in the command center, surrounded by her team of military leaders and diplomats. The holographic map before her showed the movements of the Council's fleet. Ships after ships were pouring into Earth's system, their massive forms casting shadows across the stars. "We can't wait any longer," Clara said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "They won't give us a chance to negotiate. We need to show them we're ready to fight." General Roth, standing beside her, nodded. "They've already sent their advance fleet into our system. We can't afford to lose any more time. We need to strike first, before they can launch a full assault." Clara turned to the team of scientists standing nearby. They had spent years developing the weapon that had destroyed the First Fleet. But now Earth needed something more. They needed to show the Council that they could fight, not just defend. "Is Project Solace ready for full-scale deployment?" Clara asked. The lead scientist, Dr. Layla Grant, looked up from her console. "It's ready, Madam President. We've made adjustments to increase the weapon's range and power. It will be able to target the Council's entire fleet in one strike." "Then let's make sure they understand we're not to be taken lightly," Clara said, her voice filled with determination. "Activate the weapon, strike first." In the cold, vast emptiness of space, the Galactic Council's fleet gathered in orbit, preparing for what they thought would be the final strike. Their ships, sleek and deadly, hovered over Earth like vultures ready to pick apart their prey. At the helm of the flagship, Counselor Varek stared out at the blue planet below. His mind raced with thoughts of revenge. The destruction of the fleet had been a humiliating blow, but now they would make Earth pay. The full force of the Council was about to descend upon the planet, and nothing would stop them. "We will destroy them for their insolence," Varek muttered under his breath. "This time, they will not escape." But as he gave the order for the fleet to advance, something caught his eye on the tactical display. A small blinking dot appeared on the screen, a signal from Earth. It was not a retreat. It was a counterattack. Back on Earth, Clara's eyes were locked onto the screen as the launch sequence began. The weapon, hidden within the depths of the planet's defenses, was now aimed at the heart of the Council's fleet. There was no turning back now. Launching in 3, 2, 1, Dr. Grant's voice echoed in the command center. A blinding flash of light erupted from Earth's surface, its brightness so intense it could be seen from space. The weapon's energy surged, its power far greater than anything the Council could have imagined. In an instant, Earth's superweapon fired, its energy rippling through the vacuum of space. The first shockwave reached the outer edges of the Council's fleet, causing ships to shudder and groan under the immense force. Within seconds, the energy blasted through the fleet, tearing apart the Council's most powerful warships. The ships crumbled like paper, their hulls disintegrating into dust. Varek's flagship, the heart of the fleet, was the first to be hit. The weapon's blast pierced through its shields, sending shock waves that cracked the ship's frame. The control room filled with alarms as the systems failed one by one. "No," Varek shouted, but his voice was drowned out by the chaos. His flagship was falling apart, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The once proud fleet of the Galactic Council was being torn apart in mere moments. On Earth, the command center erupted in cheers as the weapon's success became clear. The entire Council fleet had been destroyed, with only a handful of ships managing to escape. The weapon had done its job, but Earth had paid a heavy price. The cost of activating such power was enormous. The city's power grid flickered, and the planet's resources were taxed to the limit. "We did it!" General Roth exclaimed, his voice full of relief. "We've shown them that Earth is not to be underestimated." Clara stood silently, watching the destruction unfold on the screens in front of her. She felt no joy, only the weight of what was to come. The Council would retaliate, and Earth was not yet ready for the war they had just ignited. "We've won this battle," Clara said, her voice calm but full of resolve. "But this is just the beginning. The Council will send reinforcements. We need to prepare for what comes next." Across the galaxy, the remaining leaders of the Galactic Council scrambled to regain control. The loss of an entire fleet was a humiliation no one had ever imagined. Councillor Varek, though wounded, was not ready to admit defeat. "This is not over," Varek hissed, his voice dripping with fury. "We will rebuild our fleet. We will crush Earth, no matter the cost. Their rebellion will end." Varek stood before the other council members, his anger rising. "They think they have won, but they have only awakened a sleeping beast. We will hunt them down. Earth will pay for their insolence." Back on Earth, Clara and her team were hard at work, planning their next move. The victory had been swift, but it had come with a heavy price. The planet's defenses were now stretched thin, and Earth's military forces had been stretched to their limits. "We have no time to rest," General Roth said. "We need to fortify our defenses and prepare for their retaliation. The Council will send everything they have, and we can't afford to be caught off guard." Clara nodded, her mind racing. She knew that Earth's survival depended on their ability to fight back and adapt quickly. The weapon was powerful, but it was only one part of the equation. They would need to build alliances, gather resources, and plan for the long war ahead. "We will not be intimidated," Clara said, her voice full of resolve. "We have the power to fight back, and we will not stop until the Council is brought to its knees." The victory Earth had won was significant, but it was far from final. The Galactic Council was a vast empire, and its pride was as deep as its reach. The defeat of their fleet had shaken them, but it had not broken them. Across the galaxy, Council leaders were already making plans to reclaim their lost power and teach Earth a lesson it would never forget. Back on Earth, President Clara Bennett stood in the command center, watching the screens. They were already receiving reports of new fleets forming. The Council was sending everything they had, and it was clear that their next attack would be more devastating. The initial victory had been sweet, but the war was only beginning. "We can't just sit back and wait for them to strike," General Roth said, his voice steady but filled with concern. "They will hit us hard, They won't make the same mistake again. Clara nodded. We need to be ready for anything. We've shown them we can defend ourselves, but we can't do it alone. We need allies. The more planets we can unite, the stronger we will be. But Clara knew that forging alliances wouldn't be easy. The Council had ruled over countless worlds, and many of them would be too afraid to join Earth's cause. They would remain loyal to the Council out of fear, not loyalty. But Earth's leaders had no choice. They would have to convince them that a united front was their only hope for survival. The Galactic Council was not a group to take defeat lightly. The Councilors' meeting was called to discuss the aftermath of Earth's surprise attack. Councilor Varek, though wounded, was still determined to bring Earth back under control. We will rebuild our fleet, Varek said, his voice cold and full of fury. Earth has shown they can be a threat, but they will not stand against the full power of the Council. They will learn their place. Councilor Litha, the silver-skinned diplomat, spoke up. We cannot underestimate them. Their weapon is powerful, and if we attack too quickly, we risk losing more ships. We need a strategy that will break their resolve without further bloodshed. Varek growled, not interested in diplomacy. We cannot show weakness. The sooner we strike, the better. The humans need to feel the full weight of the Council's power. But what if they have more weapons we don't know about? Litha pressed. We can't take the risk of a full assault without more information. Varek stared at her, his eyes glowing with barely controlled rage. Then we will send scouts, but make no mistake. Earth will bow to the Council or they will be destroyed. Back on Earth, Clara was working tirelessly to prepare for the coming storm. The planet's defenses had been strengthened, but she knew they needed more. They needed allies, and they needed them fast. Clara's team reached out to other planets in the Council's empire, trying to persuade them to join Earth's cause. They spoke to leaders who had long been oppressed by the Council, offering them a chance to stand together against their common enemy. Some planets responded cautiously, offering support in the form of resources or weapons. Others refused to even entertain the idea, too afraid of the Council's wrath. But there was one planet that stood out, a planet that had been silent for years, hiding in the shadows of the galaxy. The planet was called Icarus, a world known for its incredible technological advancements. For centuries, Icarus had remained neutral in the galaxy's politics, unwilling to take sides in the power struggles between the larger empires. But the message from Earth stirred something in their leaders. They've already destroyed one fleet, President Lila of Icarus said, her voice steady as she looked at the message from Clara. If they can fight back against the Council, maybe it's time we stop hiding. Icarus has the technology to help, her chief advisor said. We could provide Earth with weapons, ships, anything they need to build a stronger defense. Lila hesitated. The Council had never forgiven those who turned against them. But, looking at the state of the galaxy with the Council's oppression spreading like a plague, she knew that this was a fight that could no longer be ignored. We will offer our support, Lila finally said, but we must be careful. The Council will not forgive us if we side with Earth. The next day, Earth received a message from Icarus. The small blue world was offering to send reinforcements, ships, technology, and fighters. They would join the fight against the Council, but they would need Earth's help to secure their position. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. Icarus was a significant player in the galaxy's politics, and their alliance would give Earth a fighting chance. But the Council's retaliation was already underway. Weeks later, the first signs of the Council's next attack appeared. A fleet of warships larger than any before entered Earth's solar system. The ships were massive, their dark forms casting long shadows across the stars. The time for diplomacy had passed. The Council was ready for war. We've seen this before, General Roth said, his face grim as he studied the approaching fleet on the holographic map. They're coming, and they won't stop until we're destroyed. Clara stood in front of the map, her mind racing. The forces they had gathered so far were strong, but they were still outnumbered. The Council's fleet was overwhelming. Yet Clara knew one thing for certain. Earth would not fall without a fight. We've fought back before, Clara said, her voice firm. And we'll do it again. This time, We fight with everything we have. We will show them that Earth is not to be underestimated. As the Council fleet drew closer, Earth's allies rallied to their cause. Ships from Icarus, along with other planets that had pledged their support, formed a united front. The battle lines were drawn. The galaxy's future would be decided in the vast emptiness of space. But even as Earth's forces prepared for the inevitable clash, Clara knew that this fight was just the beginning. The Council had power, but Earth had something they didn't: the will to fight for freedom. And for the first time in galactic history, a small blue planet was about to show the universe that it could stand tall against the mighty Galactic Council. The time for words was over. Earth had sent its message to the galaxy. They were no longer weak. They had proven that they could strike back when provoked. And now, the Galactic Council's retaliation was coming in full force. President Clara Bennett stood in the command center, her eyes focused on the massive holographic display showing the approaching enemy fleet. The dark ships of the Galactic Council filled the screen, their numbers overwhelming. But Earth's forces were not alone anymore. The allies they had gathered from planets like Icarus were ready to stand with them. General Roth stood beside her, his face serious as he studied the display. The Council is bringing everything they've got. This is going to be the hardest fight we've ever faced. Clara nodded. We've been through worse. We're not backing down now. Beside them, the commanders of the Icarian fleet were coordinating with Earth's military leaders. Ships from Icarus, along with those from other systems that had joined Earth's cause, were now positioned around Earth's orbit, ready to defend the planet. The situation was dire, but there was a sense of unity. For the first time, Earth wasn't fighting alone. They had allies who believed in their cause. The Council's fleet, a massive armada that stretched across the sky like a black cloud, advanced toward Earth. Every ship was a weapon of unimaginable power, each capable of laying waste to entire cities. The Council had no intention of negotiating this time. They would destroy Earth, or they would make sure that humanity would never challenge them again. Counselor Varek stood on the bridge of his flagship, his cold eyes scanning the approaching planet. His hands were clenched into fists, his anger barely contained. The defeat had stung, but he was determined to crush Earth's defiance once and for all. "This is the end for you, President Bennett," he muttered under his breath. "You will regret this challenge." But even Varek knew the truth. Earth's forces were not to be underestimated. They had allies and they had power that the Council had never anticipated. The war had already begun, and it was too late to turn back. On Earth, Clara and her team were preparing for the worst. Every resource they had was being mobilized. The defenses around Earth were ready. The Icarian ships had taken their positions, and Earth's fleet was ready to engage. "The Council's ships are entering our range," General Roth said, his voice steady. "It's time." Clara took a deep breath. She had prepared for this moment for weeks, but the reality was still overwhelming. She was about to lead Earth into one of the most dangerous battles in its history. But she knew one thing for sure: Earth would not go down without a fight. "Begin the countdown," Clara ordered. "We stand our ground, and we fight as one." The countdown began. 10 seconds. 9. 8. The air was thick with tension, and Clara's heart raced in her chest. The fate of the planet was hanging in the balance. The battle began with a roar that shook the very core of space. The first wave of Council ships fired their massive energy blasts, lighting up the dark expanse of space. Earth's fleet responded, sending a barrage of missiles and energy pulses in retaliation. The two forces collided, filling the sky with flashes of light and fire. The battle raged across Earth's orbit, each side trading blows, each side determined to win. The sheer scale of the conflict was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The Council ships were larger, more advanced, but Earth's determination was unyielding. The battle was not just for survival, it was for freedom, for a future where Earth would not be ruled by the Council. Clara watched from the command center, her fingers gripping the edge of the console. She knew that every decision made in the next few hours could mean life or death for billions of people. The weight of it pressed down on her shoulders, but she stayed focused. This was their moment to prove that Earth had a place in the galaxy. General Roth stood on the front lines of Earth's fleet coordinating the battle. His face was grim as he watched the Council's ships charging forward, but there was no fear in his eyes. He had fought countless battles in his career, but this was different. The stakes were higher, and the enemy was stronger than any he had faced before. Fleet A, move to flank, target the Council's capital ships, Roth barked, his voice cutting through the chaos of the battle. The Earth ships maneuvered swiftly, moving into position. The weapons on their ships roared to life, sending a hail of energy blasts toward the Council's flagship. The Council's fleet responded with a counterattack, their weapons lighting up the darkness of space. Earth's fleet held its ground, refusing to retreat. The Icarian ships were holding their own as well, their advanced technology giving them an edge in the fight. But the Council was relentless. Ships were being destroyed on both sides, and the toll was rising with every passing second. Back on Earth, Clara was monitoring the situation closely. The holographic map displayed the damage to both fleets, and she could see that Earth's forces were holding their own, but not without heavy losses. The Council was pushing hard, trying to break through the defenses. General Roth. Status. Report, Clara called into the comms. We're holding, but we've lost several ships in the last wave. Roth's voice came through, calm but strained. The Council isn't pulling back. They're pushing us to the edge. Clara looked at the map again. The Council's flagship was still in the thick of the battle, and its energy blasts were wreaking havoc on Earth's defenses. But Earth's forces weren't giving up. They were pushing forward, engaging the enemy with everything they had. We need to disable their flagship, Clara said. If we can take down their command ship, the rest of the fleet will follow. Focus all firepower on their flagship. Do whatever it takes. The order was given, and Earth's ships concentrated their fire on the Council's flagship. A massive energy blast from a coordinated strike hit the flagship's shields, causing it to falter. The Council fleet's commander, Varek, watched, in fury as his flagship was targeted. "No! Hold your ground!" Varek shouted. But the damage to the ship was already critical. The flagship began to list, its once proud form now a floating wreck. "Target their engines," General Roth ordered, and the Earth fleet's remaining missiles were launched. The Council's flagship, unable to withstand the barrage, exploded. In a flash of light, the destruction of the flagship sent shockwaves through the Council's fleet. Without their command ship, their forces began to falter. Ships began retreating, their crews scrambling to escape Earth's fire. The battle was far from over, but the Council had been dealt a severe blow. As Earth's fleet pushed forward, General Roth looked toward the sky. The Council's forces were in retreat, and victory was within their grasp. But they knew that this battle was just one part of a much larger war. "We've won this round," Roth said quietly. "But the war is far from over." Clara stood beside him, her eyes still focused on the battle unfolding before her. She knew the Council would return, but Earth had shown them something today. Earth wasn't going to back down. The battle had been won. Earth had successfully repelled the Council's first wave, sending them into retreat. But despite the victory, Clara Bennett knew that the real war was only beginning. The Galactic Council would not let this humiliation go unpunished. They would return with even greater force. As the last of the Council's ships disappeared into the vastness of space, Clara stood at the command center, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. Earth had won this battle, but the Council's reach extended far and wide. The Council would rebuild their fleet, regroup, and come back stronger than ever. Clara's thoughts were interrupted as General Roth stepped forward, his expression grave. "We've bought ourselves some time, but that's all," Roth said, his voice steady but filled with concern. "The Council will regroup. They'll come at us with everything they have. We need to prepare for what's next." Clara nodded, her eyes never leaving the map. "We knew this wouldn't be easy. But today, Earth showed the galaxy that we're not afraid to fight back. We'll keep pushing forward." But Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the calm before the storm. The Council's retaliation would come soon, and Earth had to be ready. The next few days were filled with preparation. Earth's forces were recovering from the battle, but they were still far from fully prepared for the war that lay ahead. They had won a battle, but they hadn't yet won the war. Clara knew they needed more allies, more planets willing to stand with them against the Council. But not everyone was willing to risk their lives for Earth. The Council's influence was vast, and many planets were still too afraid to challenge them. Clara's diplomatic teams were working tirelessly, trying to convince more worlds to join their cause. One such world was Vera 5, a planet known for its advanced defense technology, but also for its fear of the Council's retaliation. The Vera 5 leaders had long been neutral in galactic conflicts, but the recent events had caused them to reconsider their position. President Lysandra of Vera 5 sat in her council chamber, her face pensive as she reviewed the messages from Earth. Her advisors, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. "Joining Earth's fight is risky, President," one advisor said. "The Council's reach is vast. If we ally with them, we could become a target. We've been neutral for so long. Why risk it now?" Lysandra looked at the advisor, her gaze hard. "The Council has already shown that no one is safe. Earth is not the only world at risk. If we don't stand now, we may never get the chance." She turned back to the holographic display showing Earth's messages. "We may be neutral now, but we are not weak, and we will not be cowed into submission by the Council." Back on Earth, Clara received the news she had been hoping for. Vera 5 had agreed to send reinforcements. It was a huge victory. The Vera 5 fleet, with its advanced defense technology, would be a valuable asset in the coming conflict. "We have them on our side," Clara said to General Roth, her voice filled with determination. "This is the kind of ally we need to stand a chance." Roth nodded. "Vera 5's fleet is strong, they'll make a difference, but we need more. We can't take on the entire Council alone." "I know," Clara replied, "but this is a start. We'll keep pushing." As Earth's allies began to regroup and reinforce their defenses, Clara received another transmission, this one from an unexpected source. It was from Raynar, a former Council fleet commander who had defected years ago. Raynard's message was short but clear. "I know how the Council thinks. I can help you prepare for their next attack." Clara knew the significance of this message. Raynard had been an insider, a high-ranking officer in the Council's military. His knowledge of their tactics and strategies could prove invaluable. But trusting someone who had once served the enemy was a risk. "We don't have time to be picky," General Roth said, reading Clara's thoughts. "If Raynard can give us an edge, we should listen," Clara agreed. "Set up a meeting, we'll see what he has to offer." Meanwhile, the Council was already plotting its next move. Councillor Varek, still recovering from the loss of his flagship, stood in the war room of the Council's new flagship. His eyes burned with fury as he watched reports of Earth's increasing strength. "They should have learned their place," Varek muttered to himself, his fists clenched in anger. "But no, they think they can stand against us." Beside him, Councillor Letha remained calm. "The loss of the flagship was a significant blow. We must move carefully. Earth's allies are growing, and their defenses are improving. If we strike too soon, we risk losing more ships." Varek's eyes narrowed. "I don't care about their defenses. We will crush them. Earth will fall, and we will make an example of them." Litha sighed. "We must also consider the political fallout. If we destroy Earth, the galaxy will take notice. The other neutral worlds may begin to question our power." Varek's expression hardened. "Then we'll make sure they understand the price of defying the Council. Earth will be a warning to the rest of the galaxy." The calm before the next storm was shattered when Earth received alarming reports. The Council was massing an even larger fleet, and their sights were set squarely on Earth. They would stop at nothing to wipe out humanity's resistance. "We've been preparing for this," General Roth said, his voice filled with resolve. "The Council may have more ships, but we have something they don't. Unity. We'll fight together or we'll fall together." Clara stood in the command center, looking at the holographic map. "This is it," she said, her voice steady, but filled with determination. "Earth's last chance to secure its place in the galaxy. We won't back down." The message was clear. Earth would fight to the last. The war was far from over, But humanity had proven that they could stand tall against the council. Now they had to prove that they could win.